Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 68. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Happy New Year to you, Steelers Nation. I know it's been an interesting start already. Dave, anything going on? Pretty quiet, right?
Yeah, pretty quiet. Who the Steelers playing in the playoffs first round? I haven't caught up with that aspect of it. They are playing in the playoffs, right?
They're playing. There's some excitement. I wish it was football related, but unfortunately, I know I've said this like 10 times already this year, or in 2018, but I don't know where to begin with any of this. Obviously, this is a super heavy Antonio Brown show. The reason why this podcast has come out later, we wanted to record this after Mike Tomlin's press conference, and it's a good thing we did because, Dave, there was so much to talk about. I can't believe I'm even floating the idea, but the more we delve into this thing, the more we hear and the reactions from it, it is very possible that Antonio Brown has played his last down in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. Yeah,
I would agree. And we'll get into some of the specifics related to the cost factor, cap-related, cost-related aspects of all that here in a minute. But let's start, I guess, with why don't you run down Mike Tomlin's account of all that transpired, I guess, starting on Wednesday forward.
Wow, how much time do you have? Because it was a half-hour press conference and about 28 minutes were dedicated to AB. Here's the minute synopsis of what happened. Brown came to the team Wednesday, said he had knee soreness. Gave him a vet day off on Wednesday. Thursday, Friday went by, still experiencing knee soreness, AB said, so they sent him away to get testing, to get an MRI. That Brown did not ultimately get, by the way. By Friday evening, Saturday morning, Brown stopped talking to the team, stopped talking with Tomlin. They didn't know what was going on. He was basically MIA. So Tomlin Saturday evening made the decision that Brown was not going to play because he didn't know the status of the injury, didn't know what was going on, and Brown hadn't been around, the things he needed to do on Saturday. So Sunday morning, Brown's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, calls Tomlin and says, Brown is feeling better. He wants to play, or at least try to play. Tomlin says, no, that's not going to happen. He's not playing. We've already made that decision. Brown ended up still coming to the stadium on Sunday, met with Tomlin briefly. They kind of talked for some amount of time, and then reportedly Brown left at halftime. Tomlin says he doesn't know that for a fact because he was obviously busy with the game, but that was the initial report that Brown wasn't there, and they haven't talked since. So that was everything that happened leading up to the game. They haven't talked again since Sunday's game, and then during the press conference today, and just to add more chaos to the situation, Brown is hanging out with James Harrison, and they're posting on Instagram, listening to the Tomlin press conference, and they're floating the idea about an interview and talking about what's going on. Harrison's throwing some major shade at Tomlin. So that's where we're at. A lot of sentences I said that I did not expect to say coming into 2019, but here we are.
Yeah, and here we are indeed. And look, let's also back up and Mike Tomlin's not aware of any kind of dust up between, anything maybe out of, words or disagreement here and there, anything major other, out of the ordinary kind of dust up with Ben Roethlisberger that was kind of reported the last couple of days. Is that the way you took, is that what you took away from this as well?
That's what Tomlin said. There was a report that AB and Ben got into a dispute. AB, I guess, threw a football at Ben. That was a report. Tomlin says he's not aware of that. I guess he didn't categorically deny it. Ben yesterday seemed to deny it. Also, Tomlin said that Brown has not formally asked for a trade. I know that was a report from CBS yesterday, so kind of denying that. But Tomlin left the door open, basically, that the idea that Brown could be traded, saying that he doesn't want to get in that speculation, far from a flat-out denial as well.
Right, exactly. And I think at this point right now, you have to think, look, I mean, is any of this going to end, regardless of what happens moving forward? Let's say Tomlin and AB obviously at some point probably going to have another discussion. You would think Kevin Colbert, maybe Art Rooney the second, will also talk to AB. Regardless of how those talks go, is there any doubt in your mind that any more drama with is there any question in your mind that we're done with AB drama?
No, I mean, if assuming they keep him, this stuff's I think probably just going to keep happening because regardless of who's in the right and who's in the wrong here, and generally there's always going to be a mixture of both. AB's 30 years old and he is super immature. He's got kids. He's got a great life. He's been a self-made man, and I just haven't seen a person handle these situations so poorly. And odds are that's probably not going to change at this point.
And we don't know what caused AB to to take the actions that he did. I mean, is this related to the team MVP vote? Was something said, needling him here and there? Oh, Juju won it, you didn't. That set him off. There's so much that we don't know on AB's side to this point right now. All we know is what Mike Tomlin told us, and I thought for the most part Tomlin handled it well today. Now I guess the team, reading and kind of understanding what I think I know to this aspect, Tomlin maybe could have done a better job of letting the rest of the team know that AB wasn't going to play on Sunday. I mean, is that the way your takeaway is that the team really was kind of in the dark until last minute when it comes to AB playing on Sunday?
I'm not too sure what happened there. I don't know if Tomlin talked about it really at length today. If I had to guess, and I'm just speculating here, I'm assuming Tomlin didn't really get into those things with the team because he wanted to keep them focused on the Bengals game, because I know we have to think back a couple of days, but obviously the Steelers needed to win the Bengals game just to even have a chance, needing help from Cleveland. So I think that was Tomlin's plan of not letting the distractions get to the rest of the team with everything that was going on with Antonio Brown.
Do you think that some of the stuff that transpired maybe played a role in kind of the lethargic nature of the team, or is that just that's Tomlin's Steelers?
No, it's possible. I mean, it's considering how big of a mess it seems to us right now, it's probably even 10 times worse in reality, the stuff that we don't know yet, and we already know a lot.
The thing is this team still had a chance going into Sunday of, albeit slim, of making the playoffs. First and foremost, the course of action, they had to win that game against the Bengals. And then obviously they needed help from the Browns, which they almost got. That was a I'm not sure I'll ever forget kind of the pictures and the video of the team out there on the field watching the jumbotron of that final Browns game there, and for AB to basically, way it sounds like, just quit on his team. I don't think there's any other way to describe what he did, and that's quitting on his team. And I think Mike Tomlin was asked, did he quit on this team? And Mike Tomlin said, you can describe it in whatever ways you want to describe it, but there was a lack of communication there that can lead to thoughts and things of that nature that can go in many directions. The bottom line is that we were playing a significant game, and he didn't do a good enough job of communicating or being available in the hours leading up to that performance. So we needed to make decisions pertinent to getting prepared to play in that performance. So I've been really clear about outlining what transpired, the level of communication, and things of that nature. So obviously there's some things within that you can infer, certainly.
So that's Tomlin saying it without saying it. That's a very Tomlin answer.
Basically, yes. And I haven't parsed completely what all Cam Hayward said during his morning interview on DV, but in so many words, there's some repairing that needs to go on between AB and the team. And I think Mike Tomlin was asked, will he consult some leaders on the team, how what their thoughts are of with the team dealing with AB moving forward. Look, I have thoroughly enjoyed watching Antonio Brown play for the Steelers for as long as he has. I mean, you run out of, I guess, superlatives and ways to describe some of the things he does on the field. But the fact of the matter is, this team, what he and Tomlin in so many words was asked today, with the way he acts does there basically become a point where what he gives you on the field doesn't counterbalance the problems that he causes off the field? And in so many words, Mike Tomlin agreed with that. So, I don't see. I would be surprised, I think, at this point if Antonio Brown is a member of the 2019 Steelers. Prior to the press conference today, I would have probably said, yeah, maybe they'll work it out and there'll be a until next time situation. And make no mistake about it, if Antonio Brown stays on this team, there is going to be a next time of something. I have no doubt about that. So the question becomes, do you think that your team can handle whatever that next time is? And do you want to go through that anymore? And I'm not sure that the team wants to.
It's clearly a breaking point with the team, and it goes one of two ways. Either you find a way to change everything that's going on and both sides resolve to making some big, sincere changes to stop all of these distractions and all this drama and all these issues, or you move on. So I think you do everything you can to try to salvage this relationship. I don't know if you can, but you do everything you can to try to fix it. Because of how important Brown is a player on the field and how much he helps you win in that aspect. But if you can't, then I understand moving on. And I can't believe I'm saying this about Antonio Brown, a future first ballot slam dunk Hall of Famer. But that's the reality of the situation. There is not a level of respect between Tomlin and AB. That much is clear right now.
Right, and with all this posturing Antonio's doing right now on social media, evidently unfollowing all the Steelers accounts and following, I guess, the Instagram and Twitter accounts of the 49ers, and all this shenanigans that's going on with James Harrison right now. I mean, where does it stop? They have, to me now, I mean, where I'm at right now, I think they better explore what they can get for him.
Oh, I think you still explore trying to keep them together and try to salvage this, like I said. I don't know if you can. Maybe you can't. But that's the first step I take because you, like Tomlin said, you have the time to address this stuff. If you can't, then, yeah, maybe you do explore trade. And, Dave, you can probably speak to the financial ramifications and really how feasible is a trade with Antonio Brown given his large contract and given that they've restructured this deal time and time again.
Yeah, exactly. And it's while there is a lot of dead money obviously involved. In fact, here's the specifics, and I wrote this up because Ryan Clark really went after Antonio Brown on this with what's his name, Scott Van Pelt the other night on his show. In so many words, Clark said you have to trade him, you have to explore it. It's time to go. And he told a couple of unfavorable or a couple of stories back when Clark was with the team, and how they kind of saw this thing coming with Antonio as soon as he got that first contract way back in, what was it, 2012 or 13 or whenever he signed that first deal was. But here is the specifics when it comes to trading or cutting Brown. And make no mistake, if any of this was to go down with Brown, it would probably happen as soon as training can commence again, which I think is in early March, because there's that's when the trading timeline starts with the NFL heading into the start of the new league season. So I believe that trading opens at somewhere around the beginning of March, and then not long after it, obviously, a couple weeks after that is obviously the start of the new league year. Now, Brown is due a $2.5 million roster bonus. It's either like the third or the fifth day of the new league year in March. So if you're going to deal him, you're not going to pay it. You're probably not going to want to pay him that $2.5 million roster bonus and then trade him, because that's just throwing more money at him out the door on top of it. So if such a situation or such a trade or a cut was going to happen, that's the time frame that we're probably looking at. Now, trading or cutting him would result in a $21.12 million dead money charge for the Steelers in 2019 because it's happening before June 1st. If it happened after June 1st, then obviously you get some of that outstanding amortized bonus money deferred to the next season when it comes to dead money charge. But doing it before June 1st would result in $21.12 million in dead money for the Steelers. Now, Brown is currently set to count $22.165 million against the salary cap in 2019, and that includes the $2.5 million roster bonus that he's scheduled to earn as well. So essentially, by trading or cutting Brown before you pay him, whatever the roster bonus and all, you would save $1.045 million in cap space by cutting or trading him. Now, obviously, you save the base salary that the actual cash involved that you would pay him as well too. So it is, as much as there is the old dead money aspect to this, the team would actually save a little more than $1 million in 2019 cap space, and they would have him off the books at that point. Now, obviously, if you're going to trade a player that magnitude and take the kind of dead money hit and all that you would that you would take, you're going to want to get something pretty significant in return. And I guess the question then becomes, what can you get for Antonio Brown right now?
That's a really good question. I haven't spent much time thinking about it because until like 2 hours ago, I really didn't think there was much of a chance at all that Brown was going to get dealt. And the situation of Brown being traded is almost unprecedented. It's obviously draft picks. You can't do a player because of the contracts. I mean, you just don't have the money to probably support it, and draft picks are going to be cheap and just something the teams can offer that with kind of equal value. I mean,
You could do it with a player, but I mean, it would have to be the right contract that you're taking on, and then that team that's trading you a player. What's the contract with that player? How much dead money are they going to lose in this and all? And in such a deal, I don't rule that out.
No, well, sure. I mean, it could be a player if they're on a cheap deal or rookie contract, something like that. Like I said, draft picks just make more sense because inherently the player is going to be cheap. That's the point I'm trying to make. I guess it would be maybe 2 firsts and something else is probably where I'm starting it. But again, I really haven't spent much time thinking about it, and it's so difficult to know because of just how unprecedented the situation is.
Boy, and the thing is Antonio Brown, unless I don't think he has a veto power in any of this. I wouldn't think the Steelers would allow his contract to have veto power in any of this, right? I mean, you wouldn't think.
You wouldn't think, but Drew Rosenhaus is his agent, and Rosenhaus is still one of the best, so I don't know how that contract functions.
I guess Antonio could say, if they trade me here, then I'm not going to – I guess there's several ways Antonio could be more of a problem in this, I suppose. But it's not unthinkable. Look, I mean, you say saving $1 million in cap space is saving $1 million in cap space. Now, obviously, it's better than losing more cap space and not having the guy. But if you could get something like a 2 first or a first and a second or a first and a third, you would hope that it's something significant. But on top of it, teams probably know that you got to deal him too. Now, how many teams will be lining up to trade for this diva? And according to, I guess, a tweet by Jeremy Fowler this morning, there will be several teams interested in talking to the Steelers about trading for Antonio Brown. So it's not unthinkable from a cap or cost aspect of it.
Right. So you are saying that it is doable from a financial aspect.
Sure it is. Now, okay. What's allowed as far as cash and you just don't see that kind of thing. You don't see players really traded and teams say we'll give you that in X amount of cap. I'm drawing a blank trying to think of instances where some of that kind of stuff happens. The Steelers are going to more than likely be responsible for that amortized, previous bonus money. There's just no way around it. It's just like any other player in this situation. But all that said, it is feasible, and like I said, the Steelers would actually free up a little more than $1 million before. And look, when you get into roster displacement and all like that, it's basically a break-even situation.
Yeah.
So
if you're Mike Tomlin or you're Kevin Colbert or you're the Rooneys, what do you do and where do you go from here?
I trade him.
You trade him?
I trade.
Do you try to salvage this? Do you try to work it out first? Because you have the time to work it out.
But it goes back to what I said at the start of the show. What point are you going to get to, and then at what are you ever guaranteed that something like this isn't going to, the first time he doesn't get 12 targets in a game and the Steelers lose, he's over there throwing coolers or whatever or cussing out whoever. You're not going to, whatever you do, say, meetings, whatever, is not going to avoid another situation.
So you don't think this is manageable at all?
No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, yeah, if that's where you're at, then the logical option is to trade him.
It just becomes how much more crap are you willing to put up with, and at what cost?
That's fair.
Because look, if you kept him and you work out whatever, and he does whatever again, you have to take action against him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're costing the team. And people say, well, find him this way. There's only so much you can find these players, in certain situations like that. And he's a mega millionaire. That's like you dropping a $500 bill, Alex.
Okay. No, I understand. I'm sure basically they've explored every kind of way to work with AB in the past because there have been so many issues. There's been fines, there's been sit downs, there's been whatever. I'm sure are running out of ideas of how to make this work. But I still look at ways to at least, because the bottom line is that AB, at least from an on-field product, is a greater good than not having Antonio Brown, clearly. And so I still explore that, because whatever you get in return from AB in a hypothetical trade, it's very unlikely to be anything equivalent to what AB is on the field. Now, there's valid questions about off the field distractions and things that hurt the team in ways that aren't as tangible, and that's a fair point to make. But obviously, you'd rather have AB than not have AB. And so I think given that you have 2 months until a trade window even opens, you try to fix this first. Now, that's going to be difficult because it's the offseason, and AB can just be wherever else, and you don't have a lot of control over that.
The path that he's on right now, and his latest actions and social media, this guy's going to self-destruct at some point.
It feels like he is. It feels like he's in the middle of that self-destruction.
Right.
And that's hard for us to say, but it's what it feels like.
Right. I mean, he is going to. I mean, there is more meltdowns coming. And I would rather that be, and like I said, I am grateful of living in the time and seeing as many games that he played in with this team and do the things that he did. It's just mind blowing. But there comes a point where, do you want these internal problems to continue? I think you kind of set a precedent too. Now, obviously, you don't. Here's another problem with this is, you're kind of letting the player dictate to you what happens.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you're letting the player say, well, I can act out like this if I don't get my way, and I can force the Steelers to trade me. And the Steelers have never been an organization that likes a player to have an upper hand like that.
Mm-hmm.
And would it set precedent later? Are you setting bad precedent later on down the line?
Well, I mean, obviously, star players have always gotten better treatment. If this was Cody Sensabaugh doing this, Cody Sensabaugh would have been gone a long time ago. But I understand the point that you're making. Tomlin has to show that he's got control of this team. Otherwise, he's going to lose the rest of the locker room, and then you just have no chance at that point. You got to make a change at head coach as well. And Tomlin said it before. He doesn't want hostages. He wants guys that want to be here, that want to buy in and do the things that you have to do to be a champion. And right now, AB's doing none of those things. He quit on his team, and that's that's the worst thing you can do as a teammate to another teammate is quit, and that's what AB did Sunday.
All right, all the people, and it's understandable. Probably half, maybe even more than half people listening to this show want Tomlin gone because his inability to quote unquote manage a locker room and limit the drama and put in define that however you want to define that if you're listening to this. What, if anything, could Tomlin have done different so that we're not where we're at right now today?
Yeah, I find that difficult to answer. Maybe there is an answer. Hindsight's always 20/20.
But Bill Belichick would have just fired you out into the sun, right? Because he has probably the authority to look. You want to play diva, you're gone. Bill Belichick doesn't put up with that because he probably has the power not to put up with that, right?
Well, are you saying Tomlin doesn't have the power to put up with it?
Well, I'm saying Tomlin can't just pick up the phone and trade AB or cut AB. I wouldn't think. Do you think?
No. I mean, not quite, because Belichick's basically GM and head coach. But Tomlin has a ton of power. I mean, he can talk to Colbert if he wants a decision to be made. It's not like he's powerless. He's not. This isn't Jason Garrett in Dallas where Jerry Jones is running the show and Garrett's just a figurehead.
But it's not. It's not as instant. Bill Belichick, in a moment's notice, Bill Belichick wouldn't be probably bat an eye.
No, I understand, but I think if Tomlin had that Tomlin can have the same reaction. I mean, the outcome may be a little different, but he can have that authority to at least push for something that he wants.
All right. Well, it gets back to what I'm saying. What, if anything, could Tomlin have done different the last 2 years with Bell, with Antonio Brown, with whatever else?
With Haley.
What could Tomlin have done that we're not talking about? Tomlin maybe quote unquote not having control, losing the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, outside of just getting rid of guys, which they did with Haley, nothing that I know of or could think of. So point taken. And people that say Tomlin doesn't issue discipline. I mean, the dude sat AB in a must-win game against the Bengals, where if you don't win that, you have no chance to make the playoffs, even though Brown wanted to play and probably was healthy enough to play as well. So the idea that Tomlin doesn't have any sort of discipline or makes those tough decisions, you criticize Tomlin and that's fine, but the idea that he's not a disciplinarian, I think, is incorrect.
I'm not trying to offer up a defense here. I'm just trying to say, and there's so much that happens behind closed doors that us or the media, people just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, some players will say some things, and stuff will leak out over time and all like that. Tomlin has said in the past that star players get different treatment than a rookie undrafted free agent. That's probably that's understandable. But should it be understandable? I guess. Should everybody have the same rules? And is that why we're one of the reasons why we're at where we are today? Kind of thing.
Let me say this, just to play devil's advocate. I'm not saying that I agree and support this idea, but to the question of what could Tomlin have done differently, we know that Tomlin has always been okay and really encouraged guys to be personalities, to live their life, and he hasn't put the restrictions on players' social media and otherwise that other teams have done. So if you wanted to argue something, you could say that Brown or that Tomlin let these personalities be big and flourish and get over the top, and that ultimately did more harm than good. If you wanted to make an argument, that's where I would go.
All right, but how do you prevent that from happening organically anyway with a guy like AB that's got a brand and look, a guy like Juju. I mean, nobody's doing as good a work on social media and outside of outside of just regular team stuff at building a brand than Juju has in a short amount of time. You can't let one make YouTube videos and out on the street dressed. Where do you draw the line and all that? Either you're going to allow it or you're not. And how do you keep a guy like Antonio Brown from not doing these things on social media? Now, could he maybe have prevented? I guess there was a little bit of dust. You're reading it between the lines about AB's entourage at training camp and this, that, and the other. Maybe you limit that kind of stuff and all, but other stuff is still going to happen. How do you prevent in the time and day and age that we live in of social media and all of preventing 100% preventing that stuff. Yeah, you can threaten these, you can tell these rookies and these undrafted and these guys that are not established, I better not see you on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, anything out of the ordinary, or else you're going to be gone. But how do you do that to these guys that you have a lot of money invested in?
Well, like I said, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, and you could do things like no social media during the season. You could do something like that, and that's not going to prevent everything. I know you said, what can you do to prevent 100% of something? You can't do anything to prevent 100% of anything. I mean, that's just impossible. But this would have avoided something like the Antonio Brown Facebook thing before the Patriots game, because social media ban would have been in place. I'm not saying it's the right way to go. I generally lean towards let players be players and let them be people. So I've always kind of been okay with Tomlin's approach. I'm just saying, if you wanted to play devil's advocate and say what could Tomlin have done differently, that's a suggestion.
Regardless of how Tomlin maybe rules or whatnot that would have been put in place, blah, 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 would we still be at the point we are right now with Antonio Brown?
We could be. I don't know. And again, if you have a personality like that and the guy's maturity level just isn't matching his age, then maybe there's nothing you could do, and that's fair to say. I think Tomlin has done a good job of keeping everything together for as long as possible, but eventually that glue comes undone. It happened with Haley, it's happened with Bell, and now it's happening with Antonio Brown.
All right. So, I mean, and now you got the whole Le'Veon Bell thing on top of it. If you jettison one, why in the heck are you going to bring another one back into it too,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And look, I need to research, what maybe they can do. I mean, could the Steelers technically, once the trading deadline opens, trade the rights of Le'Veon Bell for a team to decide, give them, let's say, a couple of weeks to work out a deal with Le'Veon Bell, and B, if they can't have the option to either transition tag or franchise tag Le'Veon Bell, I suppose that's an option. But how many times do we see a guy that's destined, in a situation that Le'Veon Bell's in, traded within that couple of week window, basically the rights, because a team that acquires Le'Veon Bell really has no guarantee that they're going to be able to keep him.
Right. You could try to do something like, I don't think it's ever done before, but you could trade the rights to Bell for, let's say, a conditional third-round pick, and if that team doesn't sign him, then it becomes like a fifth. I mean, could something like that be possible?
Yeah, I don't want to say.
Is that even allowed?
I don't want to say yes, because I don't know 100% for sure. But look, I mean, if you let him go organically, you're going to get compensatory pick value. And
it'd be a late third, and you still might not get that because of the comp formula. So if you could get a third round pick conditionally, that would be in maybe the teens or 20s, that would be guaranteed if the deal gets done. Maybe that's an avenue, but I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there could be a conditional pick, talking about from the time frame of, like we said, when the trading deadline opens to the start of the new league, when Brown actually becomes a free agent, and whatever that free agent status is. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
With Bell, you said Brown.
Right, with Bell. Okay, I'm sorry, with Bell, not Brown.
Yeah, but I'm not even dealing with Bell today, because my mind can't even handle that after all this mess,
Right. And look, I mean, you lose Antonio Brown. I mean, I'm going to be Captain Obvious here. You're going to lose a big part of what you do offensively. And we saw what a team without Antonio Brown, what an offense with Antonio Brown looked like on Sunday.
It was not good. It's not pretty.
I mean, you would have to probably bring in you would think maybe an experienced guy, and then address the position yet again in the draft, and then obviously hope that James Washington can live up to his second round draft his second round position and everything that you have invested in him. But your offense definitely changes.
Yeah, in a big way, and everything. You still have to fix his defense too, so you have a lot of moves to make.
Regardless of what happens with Antonio Brown, that needs to happen. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. Look, if you lose Antonio Brown, you probably have to invest a a pick and another wide receiver at some point, maybe a third or fourth round, stretch the field, future problem child, because that's usually the round where you get those guys, talking about wide receivers there. So maybe you do that. But where I sit today, and you probably agree with me, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if every other pick is on the defensive side of football and then some.
Yeah. And then you just have to hope that A, your picks are correct, your valuations are correct, and B, that it comes together in time before Ben retires. Because the worst case scenario is you find the right guys, but it takes another 2 to 3 years for them to develop and everything to kind of fit into place. And by that point, Ben's either on his last leg or he's gone. And now you got to find your quarterback, and your window's closed. So it's a really tricky situation.
And that's why I go back to talking about, and I don't know the probability that happened, but if you could get a established cornerback, in exchange, Chris Harris, he's getting on up there in age a little bit, but I think he's kind of hinting that he wants out of Denver, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think he has.
Would they be interested in some sort of an exchange for Harris for Brown and maybe a draft, number one?
But that's a big contract you're taking on. Harris is going to be he's owed like $7-8 million this year, I think.
Sure, I'd rather do that, than you can't trust this team to go out and draft a first round cornerback and him come in and make an instant impact. You just can't.
No, I understand. I'm just playing devil's advocate again, just talking about the financial aspect of it.
So the good news is they have a lot of time between now and whenever the trading deadline opens in March to explore a lot of different avenues as far as to how to move forward with Antonio Brown. And at this point, I just can't see how they can't trade him right now.
Yeah, I still am trying to wrap my mind around everything that just happened today, but it seems more likely than not that a trade will happen at some point.
And he's going to be in for a rude awakening wherever he lands.
Yep.
Yep. And some sort of the wheels completely coming off of him at some point. I see at this point, kind of looking at the way he's acting right now.
I know we've been very critical of AB, and rightfully so, but I just hope the dude's okay. I hope that whatever is troubling him gets addressed and fixed. I have no idea what's going on, but I just hope he's okay, because it feels like he's in a really weird and bad place right now.
You know what, Alex? Me and my wife have this conversation all the time. Are any of us okay?
That's fair, but if there's a mental health issue with AB, and I have no idea, disclaimer, I have no idea if there is or not, but you know very well about mental health and the impact that can have, and I don't know if that's a factor, but I just hope if he needs help, he gets the help that he needs.
Right. As an individual, we hope, but all you can do is look. you can hope a guy and pray for a person to quit drinking and quit being quit being a drug addict and all, but the person needs to want to change.
Sure. It happened with Martavis Bryant. I understand. I'm just saying that as much as we are being critical of AB, and rightfully so, he's been extremely immature, at least throughout his entire career, but especially now. It seems to be getting worse, and I don't understand that. I don't know if there's an underlying issue that we don't know about that's causing this.
Well, power, fame ain't it a bitch,
Yeah, it could just be money. It could be a dude that feels like he can do whatever he wants.
Right. I can't speak from experience, obviously, but when you get into the circle shrinks. As small as it probably is around AB, you don't try. I'm sure you don't trust anybody at that aspect, at that point of things, because you got all this money and fame. Who can you trust at that point? And it causes you to get into this deeper you against the rest of the world aspect. And then I view Antonio Brown as a guy that continually needs things like this to push him to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
The deeper that he gets into the hole, the harder it makes him want to prove, to move, to attempt to move to the next level and all like that. And so, there's only so far you can go down into that hole. We're getting way off the talk here, because we're getting more into, human
psychology course.
Right,
Now.
life. I mean, it's life in general. You know, what we're talking about, and it's sad. I mean, this is not. I mean, look at Terrell Owens. I mean, look at AB's the same thing right now, basically. You know, as Terrell Owens was. I mean, major pain in the behind. You know, at this point, and there's just there's nothing in my mind that tells me it's going to magically turn 180 the other way.
Yeah, and that's a great point about T.O. and guys like that. Has there ever been a diva that stayed in one place for his career? T.O. didn't. Deion Sanders didn't. A bunch of other names you could mention did not stay in one place. So generally, they wear out their welcome sooner or later, and they play somewhere else.
Well, if you attach diva to it, yeah. Why can't they all be like Larry Fitzgerald, right?
Well, he's not a diva. That's the point.
Right. You're a diva because you're moving because you're probably a diva. You know.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, divas never stay. No diva. Correct me if I'm wrong, but no diva's ever had a 15-year career with one team. He bounces around from place to place.
Right. And
even if because Deion Sanders incredibly talented, T.O. incredibly talented, but it's just it never was enough. It was never. You couldn't justify it for long enough.
You know, that quick little thing that he put up on his social media account today, talking about Antonio Brown, quote unquote, my options may seem limited by people or circumstances. It is then that I remind myself I am, whose quote is this? This comes from somebody famous, I'm sure.
I don't know the origin of it.
My options may seem limited by people or circumstances. It is then that I remind myself I am in command of my attitude. I am divinely blessed with free will. I utilize that gift, choosing to take charge of my life, to express the creativity, vitality, and wholeness that truly define me. Look, I'm not highly educated. This came from somebody other, you know, this is obviously probably a established quote. Have you Googled it real quick?
I did. I couldn't find anything on it though.
All right. Well, anyway, but there sure are a lot of eyes in there, you know.
It sounds like a guy that doesn't want to make the situation work. Given the quote during the Tomlin presser, they're watching the Tomlin presser with James Harrison. They're just basically trolling Mike Tomlin at this point.
How surreal is that? God.
I know. I mean, that just blows my mind. I'm still trying to figure out what the words that I'm saying. James Harrison and Antonio Brown are trolling Mike Tomlin during a press conference about Antonio Brown. Just surreal. But that's the lack of respect, and that tells me that AB doesn't care. He's done. He wants to move on. Again, I'm still trying to find out if there's a way to salvage it, because if nothing else, I have the time to try to do that because it's January 2nd, but it doesn't sound like it's going to work.
No, it doesn't. All right, I'm sure people probably at this point are done with how long we've been doing this? 30 minutes?
45? Yeah, about 40 minutes.
We spent on Antonio Brown. All right, Mike Tomlin also, by the way, Mike Tomlin, you know, in so many words, you know, it's not acceptable where they're at today. They obviously didn't envision themselves sitting at home this early. Changes, you know, in so many words, changes are on the way, and big changes at that. And let me try to read off a couple of quotes here when it comes to Mike Tomlin. He says, when you lack success, when you fail, change is part of it. We've talked about it as a staff. We've talked about it as players in an exit interview or exit meetings. That's just our business. You can look around our business and see and recognize and embrace that element of it. So that's why there's great scarcity. That's why these moments are what they are. That's why we got to live them to the fullest. He goes on to say, yes, change is going to be part moving forward. What those changes will be, we're in the process of gathering information and plotting out a course. We're not going to be resistant to change in any facet. We're not going to be resistant to accountability in any facet. We're not going to be resistant to taking ownership over what has transpired, because that's not conducive to us moving forward. He was later asked during the press conference about forthcoming changes, and talked about that could include changes to the coaching staff. He says, again, like I outlined, change is part of this, particularly when you're having press conferences like today. I don't run away from that. Our staff doesn't run away from that. The evaluation process, the reviewing process, the things that we're going through as we waddle in it today, I'm acknowledging that change is part of where we're headed, and that I'm open to it, because I'm not open to repeatedly doing this. You can count on some coaching changes, I'll tell you that.
I guess we've already had this conversation Monday, but again, where do you think those changes occur?
I cannot imagine Keith Butler surviving this.
Me neither.
I can. The other, I have a growing feeling that Danny Smith might not survive this.
I think that's possible.
I have a growing feeling that a few other coaches on the coaching staff that we talked about, Joey Porter, might not survive this.
I think that's possible too. I said the Porter stays. I will stand by that. But again, it's really hard to talk about position coaches because you just don't know.
We don't hear from most of them. We hear from them in training camp, and that's it. Tom
right.
Bradley.
And even if we did, what would it matter? Even if we
right,
did.
right. I mean, you look at these position groups. From Jerry Olszewski, probably a great guy. How great a coach is he? Has he gotten this group to overachieve? I mean, Ryan Shazier sure was coming along nicely, and then he had happened what happened to him. The defensive back groups sure didn't seem to take really any steps forward under Bradley. On top of that, I mean, defensive line, I guess. Okay, but I mean, there's gonna be changes, and it's gonna be more than one.
Here are my guesses of what will happen. Keith Butler goes. Olszewski goes. I said those on Monday. Porter could go, but I think he stays. That's just my guess. I think Munchak takes the head coaching job in Denver or somewhere, but I'll say Denver. I think it's possible that James Daniel, the tight end coach, retires. He's kind of been floating that for a while now. He's 65, been in the league for a long, long time. So that's not a force out, but that's a potential retirement. And the other one that may be a surprise, and I like the hire. I thought he did a good job. What about Daryl Drake, the receivers coach? Maybe he didn't manage the personalities well enough. Is that his fault? Probably not, but maybe they make a quick change there as well.
Possible. You can't rule anything out right now. I'll tell you that. Yeah. I mean, you would think Randy Fichtner's safe.
Oh yeah, I think Fichtner's safe. Yep.
You would think Munchak.
I guess that's an easier game to play. Who's safe is easier than who's out.
As long as Munchak doesn't take another job, he's safe. You would think Fichtner's safe. You would think Saxon's safe.
Yep.
Outside of that,
I think Dunbar is safe for at least another year.
Outside of that, I'm not sure I'd bet my house on it. And look, it needs to be done. I mean, there needs to be, and generally anyway, you have a good third of the bottom of the roster changes yearly anyway.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure you do that and maybe a little more this year. This team that comes out of this 53-man roster is probably going to look a lot, and it should, and it does every year, a lot different.
And it sounds like Foster's going to be gone. They're not going to re-sign him. It sounds possible that Gilbert's going to be gone.
What makes you what makes you say that you don't think they're going to re-sign him? Foster.
Well, I want them to re-sign him, but based off of the comments, I think it was in the Post-Gazette of DeCastro talking about how kind of they cherish this as a kind of a final year. He didn't say those words specifically, but just said, we kind of really embraced this year because we knew it could be the last. So based off of those comments, based off of Foster's, I think preseason comments about, I want to get paid, and just the reality that the Steelers might go in a different direction given Foster's age, and they have B.J. Finney, and they have potential replacements. It sounds like that's where they're headed.
I am fine with Foster coming back, but the deal's got to be right, and you just have to wonder, does Foster – deep down inside, I don't think Foster wants to go, and I think deep down inside he knows that mega – worthwhile. Are you how much money is it going to take? Is it worth to move on to a new situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think he wants to get paid like he's played. He's seen everyone else around him get paid. He's always taken low contracts, and I think he finally wants to get what he feels he deserves, and he does deserve it. I
think that there's a possibility that he returns. I don't think it's. I guess what I'm saying is I think the possibility of Foster re-signing is more likely than you think.
Well, okay, maybe that's fair. I think there's a better chance he goes than he stays. Do you agree with that?
I think there's a better chance he stays than he goes, but not by much.
Okay. All right, that's fair. Now again, I want Foster back. Just to be clear, I think that I'll be very disappointed in the team if they can't bring him back, and if he signs cheap somewhere else.
I want him back, but I want the same amount of risk that was involved as the last time.
So how much are you gonna pay him per year?
Oh man,
What's your number?
Because
he got what three? He got $3 million on this past contract.
I overshot guesstimating about him. I thought his value was more about what $5 million a season last time. The whole thing is the guaranteed money aspect of it, really.
Right. But just to simplify it,
I think $4.5 million.
Okay. I've been around 5. I think a 2-year, $10 million deal is what he wants to get, and what he should get. Will he get it? I don't know, but I think that's what he's worth in my mind.
You just have to be really careful with the guaranteed money, because you have to go into it thinking that, okay, we can at least get. You're hoping to get at least 2 more years out of him, but you have to put yourself knowing that because of his age and, look, bless his heart, he played every snap this year. I mean,
right.
if anybody positioned themselves to get a little bit more money this year, it's him. He's a leader in the locker room, yada yada. But would it be hugely detrimental if he's not back? We don't. Finney has done good in the few games that he's played. Well, let's just leave it at that. But there would be a lot of question marks about Finney or whoever else. You would probably still. You go into this draft probably looking for a guard anyway.
If it opens up, if something falls in your lap, if not, you stay with Finney, and you're fine with that. I think with a guarantee that would be a problem. But when you're looking at maybe a $10 million overall contract, you're looking at a 2-year deal potentially. The guarantee is probably less of a factor because it's only a 2-year deal. You're not going to have a lot of guaranteed money inherently in a $10 million deal overall. So I think you can work it.
Agree or disagree? It's not the worst thing if they lose Foster.
I mean, it's not the worst thing, but I'll be highly disappointed by it.
All right.
I think it will hurt the team more than people understand.
All right, Marcus Gilbert. Go ahead.
When he's healthy, and we're doing the whole Vance McDonald thing, that when he's healthy, he's really talented, and you want Gilbert to be your starting right tackle. But it's a question of, do you trust him to stay healthy? And I don't at this point. And when you draft, if they hadn't drafted a core for last year, maybe it's a different conversation. But when you have a guy, a third-round pick and a tackle with decent draft capital in that, he's not supposed to sit on the bench for 5 years. So it's kind of a logical thing that you let Gilbert go and put a core for in there, or at least let him and Filer battle it out.
Right, and don't forget, although we're not expecting much, you got Gerald Hawkins out there that going to get one more, probably shaking a stick at it as well too. And look, Filer wasn't going to go to the Pro Bowl this year, but it was serviceable. And a core four was as well in his limited snaps. Obviously, is it to the same degree that is it the same quality that Marcus Gilbert played at when he was healthy? No. But the problem is how many games have we seen Marcus Gilbert be at that? Not only did he miss 10 or 11 games last season, talking about 2017, he missed parts of others. So at this point with him, and the salary that he's scheduled to earn I think a base salary of just short of $4.9 million. Obviously the workout bonus of $50,000. That's not a big concern here. But man, if he stays, then you got to go into that knowing that you're going to get every ounce of him. You can't spend that money on him. And then, like you said, you got a draft pick and a core form. I just think you're better off. Yeah, and can you trade him and get something for him with 1 year left on his contract and the time he missed? Probably not much. If you can get a 5th or 6th round pick for him, do it. But maybe there's a team out there willing to do that.
I don't think so. I think teams know he's going to get cut, and they'll just wait for if you're trying to trade him, that means teams know you're trying to cut him, and you're just going to wait for him to get released and not give up the draft pick. My last thought with the offensive line.
True or false? Marcus Gilbert is a Steeler in 2019.
False.
False. I agree.
Ramon Foster, Steeler in 2019. True or false?
I'm going to hedge towards true, just barely.
I'm going to hedge towards false, just barely. My heart says, please come back, Ramon. I really would like Foster back. My last thought with the offensive line. Okay, how about this question? Mike Munchak will be a member of the Steelers in 2019. True or false?
Oh, man.
I say false. And it kills me, but I say false.
His name out there early in all this, too, and he's a little bit younger. I mean, I suppose he deserves another bite of the apple now. So I'll begrudgingly. I got to try to put my selfishness aside here, you know. So and boy, the more you hear Ben Roethlisberger talk about how Munchak, how Denver's probably the ideal situation because I think Munchak has a daughter and a grandchild there in Denver, and yeah, and this much reported interest early, I'm going to have to say false as well too, and just hope that I'm wrong.
I forget the outlet that reported it, but I believe Munchak has an interview Friday with Denver. So that's the first official interview lined up with Munchak. He's got at least 3 other teams interested. So I say false as well. And as much as that will suck, and it will suck if Mike Munchak is gone, they do have a good plan B in Sean Surratt. I think he's been a super underrated member of this coaching staff. Hardly anyone even knows who Sean Surratt is, but him and Munchak have had a really close relationship. I think players respect him equally as they do Munchak. And I think Surratt will do a good job, assuming he becomes the next offensive line coach if Munchak goes somewhere else.
Right. This thing just isn't going to collapse now. And thankfully they had or have had Munchak as long as they had, because the offensive line just isn't going to collapse, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, and the guys that you're replacing with are in-house. They're not Finney, a core 4 Filer, Surratt. That's all in-house stuff. It's not a guy from the outside now trying to assimilate into a new group.
Right. So listen, if you're listening to this, just keep your fingers crossed. And I mean, you would think that if Munchak was to go, it would happen next couple weeks, right? I also wrote, and we kind of I think covered these, the 3 Steelers who should be cut prior to 2019. Start of the new league year. We already talked about Marcus Gilbert. I obviously have Morgan Burnett and Bud Dupree on the list. You know. As much as we want it and think that it should happen, as much as probably most people listening to this show agree with all 3 of the names, what are the likelihood that all 3 of those guys are gone? I mean, you can make a good argument that there's nobody behind Bud Dupree right now, but man, he's a $4.5 million a year guy. He's not a $9 million guy, but something tells me that we're not going to get our wish with Bud Dupree. Something tells me that he's going to play on that 5th-year option for $9.232 million.
Do you really think so, Dave?
I think he is. I mean, as much as I'm trying to look at this, we don't have a big, when it comes to these 5th-year options, we don't have a big track record because of it being part of the 2011 CBA and all. So we don't have.
So where's that idea even coming from? I know you're not saying that you want it to happen, but what makes you think that it will happen?
I just think they picked him up. I mean, they picked up that 5th-year option for a reason. I think they're going to stand behind it.
God, that'd be the dumbest thing if they do that. If that's the rationale.
I think they value him, unfortunately, more than we value him. I'll put it to you that way.
I mean, I might value him more than Steelers Nation does, because I know he's played hurt the last 2 years. Last year with an elbow arm injury, this year with a torn pec he finished out on. But it's just not enough. That's not enough of an excuse. You may bring him back for cheaper. I'm open to that, but if they keep him on this 5th-year option for just 1 year, they deserve everything that they get or don't get.
I'm not validating that they should.
No, I understand. I understand.
I just have a funny feeling that they're going to keep him.
They better not. I'll say that.
I mean, now look, you could turn around with that $9 million and use that as a signing bonus on somebody else.
That's my point.
on a corner or outside linebacker free agent from somewhere else around the league or whatnot. So, I hope they don't.
My last question to you, and then
what about Burnett? They gonna cut Burnett?
I know he played better at the end of the year, and you could probably argue that he was healthy and he kind of got comfortable in the system. But I mean, how much is he owed? 4.5 next year, 2019. in his base salary?
He is, let's see, he got a $4.2 million signing. He's now scheduled to earn a $5 million base salary in 2019.
Yeah, I can't justify that. The health, again, and it goes back to the primarily the issue is health. Do you trust him to stay healthy? And I just don't think he's athletic enough to play in space. I mean, again, he made a couple plays this year at the end of the year. It's not enough for me, though.
Do you wait with him and cut him later, June 1st? Or do you wait to the new year and designate him? Let me ask you this: Do you wait until the new league year and then designate him as a post-June designation?
You can. I mean, if you want to clear up the extra, if you want to spread the cap space out, that's fine. But you have some cap space to absorb that hit, so I'm also fine with. It might be better to do it this year because you might have big contracts on the books if you go heavy in free agency for 2020. So I probably don't do that, but I don't care.
All right, my biggest fear is that Bud Dupree. We're going to be talking about Bud Dupree.
Well, if that happens, I'm gone. I'm
No,
going to Mexico. You're never hearing from me again.
No, you're not.
My last question for you, Dave, before we get to read your emails, going back to the coaching changes. By the time, because we're doing it Friday, right? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I guess we'll do another one Friday. Yeah.
Okay. Will there be any coaching changes made by the time we talk Friday?
Yeah, I mean, semantics, right? I mean,
okay. Let me just ask you this: how quickly do you think changes get announced? Because there's going to be changes. We just don't know when. I think it'll be quick. They got to move quick on this. They can't. Everyone else is going to start hiring coaches. Staffs are going to start getting put in place. You got to start finding guys.
I'll guess no, but I mean, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, no one knows. I think it happens, but sometime by Friday, maybe after our show Friday. That's how it always goes. We have a show, then news breaks, and we get to wait till Monday. But they got rid of Haley 3 days after the season ended last year, and I don't think you can take 2 weeks to know if you're going to – I mean, you have a conversation. You have a conversation with Tomlin, Colbert, Rooney. That's fine. Might take a day or two, but you don't need a week to talk about this stuff. You talk about it, you come to a conclusion, you make your decision, and you announce it. You don't drag your feet. What's the purpose?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
So, well, yeah.
I guess we know the changes are coming.
Right. So make them as soon as possible so you can start finding the replacements.
Right.
Because you got the Senior Bowl coming up here pretty soon, and you got to have everybody in place for that and give them as much time as possible to start preparing and start getting used to what the Steelers do.
All right. What else? What else do we have to wrap this things up with here?
I don't have anything else. If you wanted to get to some reader emails, I know we asked for some emails, and that was before all the AB stuff today, so I don't know if some of them are super relevant, but I'm sure that a lot of them still are.
All right, how far are we into this thing now?
About an hour, so we can maybe go 10 minutes on this.
All right, let's see. Andrew Ho writes, can you address the most, he wants the trade possibility cap ramifications. Andrew, we already did in this show earlier, and it was in a post a few days ago. Check out the post I did on Ryan Clark talking about AB and how they should trade him. So that's one that was easy to do. Let's see. Rich Boylan, thank you for keeping me from obesity. I exercise to the terrible podcast exclusively. Lord, I think that's a first. I'm still in terrible shape. You two do a wonderful job. Listen, you got a core of very talented young players on the rise. Certainly looks bright, but I've got to say Vince Williams' tweet that he hates rats, F them, is very telling to him. There certainly is lack of cohesion in the Steelers locker room, and I feel there is a divide amongst old guard and new guard. I find it hilarious that Williams, after another mostly ineffective backup grade season, chose the fraternity house bully and hazing route to express his feelings and lack of leadership. As a Steeler lifer, someone needs to be sacrificed quickly here. I'm shocked to have come to this conclusion, but Tomlin really does need to go. Listen to the words expressed by the players. Steelers leaders sure don't act like leaders. Ben effing Roethlisberger led the league in picks. Keep dismissing and blaming the defense. They stink and it's deserved. You show me the last time Hall of Fame quarterback led the league in picks. I'll take Ben over any team, but he made too many terrible decisions in 18. We are a team with no leadership whatsoever. As players do say, act without fear of consequence. Rant over. Okay, that's Rich's rant. The only thing about Vince Williams' tweet, are we sure he's talking about rats in the locker room, or could he be talking about the Baltimore Ravens? I mean, I understand where you're coming from, where he's maybe talking about people leaking stuff out of the locker room. I get that, but I've tried to read in between, some tweets before and have gotten it terribly wrong before as well too. So appreciate you reaching out to us, Rich. Oh Lord, we got a long one from F War 83. Let's hold on to that one. Let's see if we got another short one here. I have a question that's been nagging me for a while. It seems like Dave hardly ever posts the evening after a Steelers game, but instead let some of the others do so. I have some theories about that, but fun to hear the truth. My theory is something like Dave likes the following in his argument discussion, has trouble getting those the first night. Data, another pass at the game, objectivity. Number 2, he says, I would have said that he wanted to get some rest after the game, but he starts in later times than most of the other gang does, and doesn't seem an early to bed type. You got that right. I'm a no bed type. Set in his ways, editor's prerogative. I can't blame him for any of that. Just curious. Here's what happens after games. It's an organized chaos, if you will. Guys like Daniel, immediately, his job is to write the immediate game recap. Alex, you run off into the direction of doing the stats.
And the winners and losers.
Winners and losers and stats of the weird and stuff like that. One of us has to pay attention to the Mike Tomlin press conference and the press conferences that follow. Injuries. I usually handle injuries. You normally see me hit injuries right away. Ben and whatever other players talk. If there's anything significant in there, it's my job to do that as well too. Matthew's very good, and he's a lot quicker than I am at hitting relevant game stories, if you will, those kind of things. I mean, Matthew is tremendous. He already has during his mind while he live blogs the game of what he's going to write about. So he usually lets Alex and I know immediately after the game is over what directions he's going in, and then we try to work around that with him. I write a lot slower than these guys do. A ton slower than these guys do. So it takes me longer to A, pick out what these guys aren't writing about and then write about it. And then B, I have to get the initial stats and charting done for both Alex and Matthew Marksy as well too. So it's not an easy process of parsing those stats and then putting together all the columns that we like to do. So all these, when I send these guys their charts, they're fill in the blanks basically. Where the player lined up and other aspects that go on in individual play. So my part of what I do before I go to bed after a game is I have to get these raw, we call them raw charts, to these guys as well too. And it's much easier for me to write the injury recap, maybe one other post and all, and then let these guys go about their business of doing what they do best, because quite honestly, they write better and do it quicker than I do.
Yep, I mean, that's usually how it goes. You're very wrapped up in the charting. I mean, there's so much that happens with the site that we don't see, the reader doesn't see, so much that happens in the back end and conversations with Dave and I and Matthew. And frankly, this year at least, the back half of this year, with so many evening games and night games, by the time that we post all of our stuff, we don't need any more content out because we want to let people read the content we've posted. And it's, midnight Eastern Standard Time, and, we can kind of let it breathe for the night and then tackle it the next day with the podcast and getting, the Monday stuff started. So that's just, Dave's still working. It's just, we take different paths.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's a lot, and like I said, one of us has to listen and record these podcasts. I mean, these press conferences and all, and then I got to get those recordings to these guys as well too, and some transcribing has to go on top of it. So yeah, I might not have the post up there, but trust me, I'm playing. Yeah, I got to watch the game again too, because I usually like to make at least one full pass at a game through a game. Before I jump on the recap podcast the next day with Alex. And we usually do those at 7 o'clock Eastern time, the next morning. So I mean, there's a lot of moving and shaking goes around. But I mean, I understand how it might look on the outside, Kevin. And appreciate the question, but that's the nuts and bolts of how the sites run. Now, one last one from Jesse Hernandez. Hey, Dave, I just want want you to know how much would you say he says, I just want to know how much would you say T.J. Watt has improved, and what do you think his ceiling looks like? Also, if you were Mike Tomlin, you were forced to take either Bug Ben's, I think it's Big Ben's side, or AB's. Who are you taking? Well, hey, I take Big Ben's side based on what we know after today. That's for sure. T.J. Watt, Alex, how much did he improve? What do you say his ceiling looks like?
He really has improved, and not only just from the beginning of the year, but from like the back half of the year, maybe the last 6 weeks, really with his hand use. I don't know if he's worked on it more, if something just clicked, but I think he's been able to get off of blocks. He's got a better punch, a couple more moves in his arsenal, and just a guy that's doing a better job of not getting engaged, staying disengaged, and getting free. So he's been great. What his ceiling is, I mean, still to be determined. I don't think he's a Von Miller 15 sack a year type of guy, but maybe a step below that, and a very good pass rusher.
They need to do a better, and they did, I guess, a little bit at certain times, especially with him moving over to that left side. Making sure they scheme well enough where he gets a one-on-one, and a one-on-one where he can win. And he's done a better job at winning and providing pressure. And as Alex said, with his hands, as well. Look, we go back to coming out of Wisconsin there, and things that Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert said about was the hand usage with him. He still needs to do a better job with his plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, but I think he's gotten a lot better at it. And I think, again, this is a guy that hadn't played a lot of football on the defensive side of the ball at Wisconsin, and I think that's why you're seeing an accelerated development, because he's getting to catch up on all that he didn't get to do with the Badgers.
He made improvements. There's no doubt about it this season, especially in the latter part of the season. And the number of high quality sacks aren't there yet, but I think he has room for improvement in that. Next season, we should see more high quality sacks from him.
Agreed. And I thought you saw some of those high quality sacks late in the year.
But when he gets put on a tight end and all, those are things that he better, or running back, or allowed to run free like he did against Carolina. Those are the things where he better make impacts on right there.
Yep, definitely.
And I thought he did a better job of that this year on the situations where you would expect him to win instantly. He had a higher percentage of those. There's plenty of room for growth and improvement, mind you, but the arrow is pointing up. I think we will get a good look in 2019 of what his ceiling is. Agreed?
Agreed. And I think you'll be very impressed by the progression he continues to make.
Now, on the other side is a different story. So we talked about this. Yeah. For those of you, and there's a few of them, that did not get your questions answered, we will get to more of these on the Friday podcast. But there was so much to, and I still don't, I don't know. I feel like we still didn't do a good job at trying to digest what all went down today. I don't know about you, Alex.
We got a long off season to digest it, unfortunately.
But we will be writing about a ton of this more, what came out during the Mike Tomlin press conference today on SteelersDepot.com. Cameron Hayward will be recapping what he had to say. It's going to be a busy week and next week or two, so expect us to continue on with the 3 podcasts a week for the time being. We'll give you a heads up when we start shifting down into that 2-a-week mode there. So once again, thanks for everybody who continue to send questions. Thanks for those of you that continue to donate to the site. That does not go unnoticed. Thank you very, very much. You can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. You can follow the show at Terrible Podcast. You can email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Once again, if you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button upper right navigation bar. Oh man, what a day. We've got so much work to do now. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.